convinced me of the truth of that statement. A woman's work is never done. Don't misunderstand. Some days I felt like the richest woman in the world, but other days left me thinking something I never thought I would think. I was made for more than this. Meanwhile, Bruce would come home from teaching school or giving walks through the Bible seminars and tell me about all the exciting things God was doing in his life. I, on the other hand, could give an account of how many Cheerios I had picked up off the floor, how many loads of clothes I had folded, and how many books I had reread to the children. It wasn't hard to decide who had the more significant life, or so I thought. Until then, I had considered the Prayer of Jabez something that might as well be labeled for men only. After all, Jabez himself was a man, and in addition to my husband, most of the people I knew who prayed the prayer were men. Now I began to wonder, is it possible? Could the prayer of a herdsman who lived thousands of years ago bring blessing and abundance to a woman's life today? If so, what might that look like? Spurred on by the exciting stories I heard from Bruce and others who prayed this prayer, I began to use the words of Jabez to express the deepest longings of my own heart. I pleaded with God for a better and bigger view of my life, one that would reveal what He had in mind for me. Ever so gently, God began to challenge some of my earlier conclusions. Could it be that my world wasn't as limited as I sometimes deemed it? Was I missing important opportunities right in front of me to see God at work? Might it even be true that I was born for more, and God was now inviting me to experience something grand and significant that I had overlooked? Each time I prayed the Prayer of Jabez, I had more understanding about what I was really asking God to do. Soon I began seeing His character, my own life, and the circumstances around me in a new light. God's blessings began to flow into my life, and even better, to flow in obvious ways from me into the lives of others. I wanted to keep praying the prayer because God kept answering it. As you may already be aware, God is using the Prayer of Jabez to change millions of lives. Men, women, and teens have responded to the message and embarked on a Jabez journey. So why did I feel the need for a Jabez book, especially for women? I have to admit that at first I wasn't sure there was a need. After all, the message of Jabez is already aimed at both men and women. But as women all over the world began to write letters to Bruce in response to Jabez, I noticed that they raised questions and talked about issues that were important and wholly unique to women. I observed that God is equally excited to answer this prayer for both men and women, but that we experience those answers in very different ways. This only makes sense. As women, we do face different challenges than men. We experience different kinds of temptations, and we look for different kinds of help and provision from God's hand. Many of us are caretakers and spend a great deal of time nurturing our families and friends. Therefore, we approach ministry and relationships differently than men. For these reasons and more, I believe there's much to be gained by looking at what happens when we pray the Prayer of Jabez as women. I don't promise that you'll find every answer for every woman in this book, but I will try to help you understand what it means to live a Jabez life as a woman. By the time we're finished, I trust you'll agree with me that Jabez's ancient, simple prayer is surprisingly suited to the modern-day woman who longs for God's powerful touch on her life. If this is the first time you've been introduced to the Prayer of Jabez, you may be saying to yourself, I've heard of Moses, David, and John the Baptist, but who in the world is Jabez? Remember when you first decided to read 1 Chronicles? Chapter 1 begins with a genealogy dating back to Adam that lasts 9 chapters. You may have enjoyed exercising your phonics skills on the more than 500 names like Shepatish or Aholabama, but my guess is that by the second chapter of names that were difficult to pronounce, you were skimming through the verses trying to find where the story begins. Whoops, that may be how you missed Jabez, who doesn't appear until chapter 4. Hidden in the midst of Israel's family tree is the story of a man who'd been standing on his tiptoes, trying to see over the obstacles in front of him. 2 short verses give us a brief look at this man and how he prayed. 1 Chronicles 4, 9, and 10 says, Now Jabez was more honorable than his brothers, and his mother called his name Jabez, saying, Because I bore him in pain. And Jabez called on the God of Israel, saying, Oh, that you would bless me indeed, and enlarge my territory, that your hand would be